I'd like to start this video off with a bit of a riddle for you. How many structures do you think are in this base? It could easily be one single structure, but then how would we place so many walls? It could also be 5 structures, but then how did we line everything up? Sure, we could have eyeballed it, but I'll tell you here. This is actually only 2 structures, the towers and the core. Today, I'm going to show you how to build like this, exceeding the 300 structure cap without any bugs, glitches, or exploits, and expanding your simple starter home to a massive mega base. So what's going on, everyone? My name's Tenebris and welcome back to Nightingale, where we'll be discussing how to build on a larger scale. This expands building from what can feel like a kinda limiting system to an almost unlimited potential. We'll go over how to combine foundations to expand your base location, how to build interlinked yet de-established foundations, and lastly, we'll go over some examples of how large-scale this building system really is. First, let's look at combining foundations to expand your base area. When you build in Nightingale, you have a couple caps to pay attention to. First is the structure cap. You can place down 300 pieces to your base as a maximum. We then can have 350 furniture pieces, and lastly, 100 buildings in total. When you need to expand beyond 300 pieces for a build, which, for example, is about the size of this tower or oriental castle, all you need to do is place a foundation nearby, line it up, and continue for the new structure. Foundations in the game all overlay naturally when placing, so the closer you can get to this overlay, the more in line your new foundations will be with your previous structure. There are a couple ways I've figured out to align your foundations. One method is by using the corner of your previous foundation. This is a fast and easy method when you don't need things to line up perfectly, say when you're adding an additional structure to a previous one, like these towers for the central courtyard. The next method is for if you want things to be as aligned as possible. You'll take your current foundation and extend it by 1. Then place a crude portal on the very edge of that foundation, and then delete the foundation below it. After that, take your new foundation and use the portal to line up your new continuation of foundation. And with that, you have just increased your build size from 300 to 600 with just a few simple steps. Now, for the crazy part, you could do this 100 times. With just some simple maths, that means if we were only placing foundations, we could have a continuous area of 30,000 foundations. Now, there's a bit of a caveat here, in that when you spawn into a realm, some of the building cap will be taken up by pre-made structures. But really, who's going to go and place 30,000 building pieces anyway? It's just a ridiculous upper cap to have. So now let's talk about how to build what I'm calling de-established foundations, where an established foundation would all be one solid piece for a structure. A de-established foundation is when you break up the building cap of 300 to 2 or more structures. This could be useful for a bunch of things, like keeping your building limit under control so you don't reach the 100 building limit, or for symmetry. As an example, we have this build's towers. I could have them all as separate structures, but then I'd be using 5 buildings for one large one, where it's a lot more economical to break up the towers and core area and just use 2 buildings. But again, it's also really useful for symmetry, as it will keep your buildings on a similar grid, especially if you're using the portal method to line up your foundations. The way this works is when you are placing your foundations, you will lead a trail of foundations from your previous build to a new one, carrying the same structure limit over. Then, remove the middle foundations and you have 2 de-established builds that carry the same building cap. And lastly here, let's take this information and show some practical applications. Firstly, looking at structures that use the whole 300 structure cap. Because in order to work on a larger scale, it's good to understand what the maximum is per individual structure. For example, my Japanese castle, or what's called a shiro, used all 300 building pieces. With this, I was able to make the connected tunnel, crafting rooms, and main hall, as well as the courtyard. Or my tower, which used all its structure pieces for primarily the core of the tower itself. And here is what 300 foundations look like in the game. This is the max area you'll have to work with if you're just building one continuous foundation. So let's take a look at how this desert build is put together. We'll start with the main foundation that is 7 wide and 4 long. We'll then take that foundation and extend it by 1, place a portal and line things up. And this will serve as our foundation for our towers. We'll then make a 3x3 foundation for the tower, and come along the width here by 3 more foundations. Once we place our 4th, that will serve as the start for our 2nd tower. We'll then delete the middle foundations, making these de-established. Continue on with the 3x3, and now we'll do the same thing that we did in the first place. We'll line foundations along the 4 long wall, then on our 5th foundation, we'll delete the previous foundations between the towers, build a 3x3, then continue the procedure for the 4th tower. This way, we have a foundation in the center to build upon, and each of the towers have their own caps. Yet, we still only used 2 buildings for the whole process. And when you're working with a massive foundation like this one that takes up the entire cap, this winds up as an area of 15 by 20. If you want to build in an area like this, you'll need to remove foundations and place in new ones to place new buildings. To start, we'll remove a ring of foundations and then an extra 3 foundations on whatever side we plan on starting from. This is to avoid snapping to your previous foundations. Then we'll place a portal on that central foundation and remove it as well. And then on the side where you removed the extra foundations, you'll lay a new one, and that will be the start of your new building. You can then extend this as far as you want, as it's aligned to the same grid as the exterior foundation. Just make sure you're snapping to the right foundation by checking its cap, as working with a bunch of snapping points can sometimes lead to some confusion. As a final piece of general advice here too, always support your structures. This all leads to building on a much larger scale, so remember that roofs and upper floors need vertical support in the form of pillars and walls. And with that, you are now on your way to building massive structures here in Nightingale, the only real limits being your creativity and maybe those pesky realm caps. Hopefully this guide was clear and easy to follow, but as always, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments down below, as I'm always happy to help. But for now, thank you very much for watching, consider subscribing to stick around for more Nightingale content, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace.